Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Vicente, and this short video is being prepared for Education Leadership and Policy Studies program, class number 363 for Dr. Kenneth Saltman. So welcome to this tutorial. This short video will provide you a basic knowledge of social bonds. Social bonds are also known in our capitalist society as pay for success. What are social impact bonds and what are their goals? Well, they're not really bonds. They are stakeholders, partnerships. And the goal of these bonds is to tap into the institutional marketplace. But for now, the philanthropists are taking the leading role. In this 2014 Boston Globe article, Massachusetts Congressman Joe Kennedy published an op-ed in the Boston Globe highlighting the great potential of pay for success. As Congressman Kennedy points out, pay for success initiatives garner significant bipartisan support and harness the ability to deliver measurable outcomes while saving taxpayers millions of dollars. Where did these bonds come from? Well, social impact bonds came from the United Kingdom back in 2010. Proponents of these bonds promote their cause by identifying themselves as the saviors to the social needs of specific populations, mostly the poor, the homeless, and the sickly. Listen to this short clip. As you can hear the speaker's discourse, and you will see how they use children to create a space for empathy to credit their claim.
Right now, you realize the gap is growing. And our third problem is what I'll call kind of a transparency or a metrics problem. We're very good at government at talking about what we do, but we're not so good about talking about the outcomes, which creates a very positive feedback loop if you do that. So let's think about these problems in the context of a real-world example. Let's use asthma as an example. So 25 million Americans are affected by asthma. Asthma episodes cause 2 million emergency room visits, 500,000 hospitalizations. Our kids miss 14 million days of school because of asthma. It's the #1 reason that younger children have school absentees. And Americans miss 10 million days of work. It costs us $60 billion a year as a nation. But I bet you didn't know that 40% of asthma episodes are triggered by what's called housing triggers. These are relatively simple things in the homes, mold, pet hair, insects, chemicals, that trigger these episodes, mostly, quite frankly, among poor people. The data suggests that each asthma episode costs us $10,000 as a nation. But the data also suggests that if we invest $2,500 or less in these homes, we can remediate the situation. If you extrapolate that across the population and look at the numbers, it's an incredibly good return on investment. So what the government should be doing is taking the Medicaid population, which is the poor people that we provide health care to, that have asthma, and we should be doing innovative things to intervene in the home and prevent these housing triggers. It would be really good for them, and it would be really good for the bottom line of the country.
Social impact bonds, as mentioned before, came from England in 2010. The first state that they came to was New York, but the second was, of course, our own, Massachusetts. Jeffrey Lieberman, who is a professor of political science in Harvard, is one of the big proponents of these bonds. He stated in an interview, which I thought was kind of crazy, not interesting, crazy, "We have no interventions. Children are not ready for kindergarten," which left me thinking, how are children supposed to be ready for kindergarten? Don't they just go from their homes to kindergarten? I mean, I understand preparing children for high school, preparing them for college, but preparing them for kindergarten, that just, to me, that doesn't sit well. But anyways, Lieberman also sees pay for success programs as a solution for homelessness and a path of transition from adolescence to adulthood. Another one of the proponents is former Governor Duval Patrick. He too welcomed social impact bonds in the United States. Patrick argued that social impact bonds would solve lack of housing, homelessness, as well as improve the juvenile justice system. These bonds would rehabilitate the youth coming out of jail. Let's go back to the philanthropists, the major proponent in the USA. Who is investing? Who is promoting Pay for Success? According to Dr. Kenneth Saltman of UMass Dartmouth, Goldman Sachs is one of them. They have invested $16.6 million. Bank of America is another. JP Morgan is another one. The Rockefeller Foundation, no surprise there. Chicago Mayor Emanuel Duval Patrick, as we mentioned before, and Harvard University. Let's discuss the win-win-win situation. You're going to be watching a clip of Bob Rice. He is the general managing partner with Tangent Capital Partners in New York City. He explains how social bonds are just the best solution to a lot of our social problems ever. What he says, and you'll see, the bank profits, taxes are not raised, and it supports innovation. Of course, we can't leave innovation out. So this is great, right? Watch this clip.
Social impact bonds. So Bob, we know that New York City is the first city in the U.S. It's basically doing a very big experiment. Goldman Sachs giving almost $10 million in social impact bonds. And it looks like this could be the beginning of a pretty cool civic business relationship.
Yeah, it's really a great new idea. It's only a couple of years old, and it's a way that you can take private dollars and invest them for public good in a way that makes sense to capitalists. So, you know, it's not philanthropy.
It's the right thing that New York City is perhaps the first place this is being tried.
Yeah, it's
Plenty
perfect.
of capitalists here.
It's perfect. And the way it works is you buy a bond, a Goldman Sachs will buy a bond. In this particular case, it's primarily about trying to cut down the recidivism rate in prisons. So the money is used in a very, very specific program that Goldman, as the bond investor, has vetted and said, yeah, that makes sense. We believe this will work. And they put the program in place. And after a few years, we check to see if the recidivism rate has gotten to a certain level, gotten down to a certain level. So here, if it gets down to 10%, Goldman gets its money back. If it drops below 10%, Goldman makes a nice profit. But if it doesn't drop enough, then Goldman takes a haircut on the bonds.
All right, so that's a little bit of the structure. What is the benefit?
Well, the benefit, it's a very interesting thing, because, of course, the obvious thing to say as well, you know, the benefit is the city gets $10 million. But really, I don't think that's the benefit here. I think the benefit is innovation. It's very, very difficult for governments to innovate. If you think about the government budgeting process, things have to be done way in advance, and there's no money for R&D. You know, in a city budget, governments aren't good at innovating. That's not what they're all about. The private sector is great at innovating. That is what it's about. And so putting these two things together is really great because, again, the bondholders, if they don't believe this program is going to work, they're not going to put the money in. At the same time, if it does work, the government realizes a very significant savings. This is the key point. You know, the government is going to pay back if the recidivism rate drops because they save a ton of money by not having all these prisoners. So sharing the upside of this thing back to Goldman makes perfect sense for everybody.
So it makes sense for citizens, it makes sense for the capitalists, makes sense for government, win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win, and it also makes sense for one other group that people aren't really talking about yet, which is think about the endowments and foundations out there who do have philanthropic purposes, but also have to jealously guard their capital so that they'll have enough money to keep going and keep giving to charity over time. What a great way for those kinds of organizations to invest in change, literally invest in change, and if the programs that they back work, they'll have even more money to put to work in the future. So it's really a fascinating idea, and it applies to healthcare and housing and all sorts of other projects.
According to Dr. Ken Saltman of the University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth, there are 5 myths surrounding pay for success. Number 1, market discipline. Number 2, transfer of risk from public to the private. Number 3, accountability. Number 4, cost saving. And number 5, corporate social responsibility, which I will now briefly discuss each one of them. Dr. Kenneth Saltman references Lieberman, who, as we know, is the leading proponent of pay for success. Lieberman said, programs that do not produce results continue to be financed year after year, something that would not happen in the business world. So this is great. Then we are not wasting with pay for success. What he means is that our programs that do not succeed will no longer be financially supported, unlike pay for success, which will only support programs that will succeed in the future. Otherwise, the government will not continue to finance them. Myth number 2, transfer of risk from the public to the private. In this myth, Dr. Saltman references Mayor of Chicago, Emanuel, where Chicago Public Schools and its teachers will manage the expanded program in these schools for the current academic year and expand to additional schools in future years. Dr. Saltman adds, if the program simply expands existing Chicago Public Schools programs with already employed teachers and administrators, then the potentially significantly higher cost of using pay for success makes little sense. He goes on to add that pay for success is really of little risk to investors. Why would they invest? Mostly because a lot of these projects have been proven to be successful. In other words, if they pick projects that have no other alternative but to increase their performance, then they have no other way but to show improvement. An example would be Goldman Sachs, who is never going to put up $5 million with a 50% risk of losing their money, and so it will invest only in proven projects, according to Dr. Saltman. Myth number 3, accountability. Dr. Saltman states, proponents also claim pay for success programs are more accountable than the public sector because allegedly programs are measured independently. So I must ask, measured by who and how are they being measured, and who are these inspectors? There are critics, according to Dr. Saltman, who have raised issues about who is making the decisions about measurement and how benchmarks have been decided. Contracts with the inspectors, also known as independent consultants, are so convoluted and complicated, according to Dr. Saltman, that what normally would take a month to do takes 2 years, and with financial arrangements so complicated that a university professor in financial management still needed help understanding the financing. Not to mention that there are some amazing creating incentives that would be considered corruption pressure, according to Dr. Saltman. Myth number 4, cost savings. Dr. Saltman claims that a central argument of pay-for-success proponents is that they save money by only funding successful programs. Of course, why would they invest their money on a program that they know is going to fail? Dr. Saltman adds, pay-for-success introduces large expenses to fund extensive legal services to handle those convoluted and complicated contracts that take years instead of months. Additionally, third-party project managers and evaluators add cost to the services. If the metrics pan out for the investors, then they can earn more than double the money that they put into the service. For example, in Chicago, Goldman Sachs could more than double their initial investment of $16.6 million, as the metrics determine that Goldman receives the maximum amount from the city under the agreement, which is a much higher total cost to the public to provide the service of 2,600 children than what a bond insurance would be. Myth number 5, corporate social responsibility. This is where all CEOs come in dressed as Superman and Batman. They all come to save our education system. According to Dr. Saltman, the private sector project of Pay for Success is not merely one that involves the private capture of public wealth, but also the public reframing of symbolic meanings that make such wealth capture possible, remaking common sense in ways that suggest that only the rich can promote just social change by pursuing their financial interests. Such ideologies suggest that the very private forces responsible for draining and weakening the public are in fact saviors for the public, that there is no alternative to markets in every social realm, that public citizens are nothing more than economic actors. Again, what are social impact bonds and what is Pay for Success? It's the elite of our societies disguised as superheroes to solve our social problems. It's privatization dressed up. Thank you.